Hey, folks. Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Welcome to Washington, D.C. Although you can't tell, I'm in the nation's capital right now. I am indeed here in a hotel room, getting ready to check out after a few great days here for President Trump's inauguration. I can't begin to tell you how momentous it was to be covering this for Stakelbeck Tonight, my nightly show on TBN, to attend some of the events, one of the galas, a Christian inauguration gala Sunday night, to have some meetings with people who are going to play a role in the administration. Did Fox News last night, appeared on Fox News as well with Trace Gallagher, breaking down what the next 4 years hold for America and for the world now that the Trump effect is in full effect. I've called it the shift, certainly a shift where I'm sitting right now in the United States. I think this shift is going global, and it all stems from Donald Trump taking office once again. So we'll break that down a bit in relation to what does it mean Donald Trump's return to office. What does it mean for the world's most volatile, chaotic, and strategic region, the Middle East, and in particular, Israel? We need to break this down, right? Because look, every president, no matter which administration, their attention eventually is forced to turn to the Middle East. This is the way the world goes. Things always come back to the most prophetic region in the world, where the Bible unfolded, not only in Israel, but in Iraq, Iran, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria. Those are the Bible lands where everything started and everything will eventually conclude in world history. So it should really be no surprise that eventually the leader of the free world turns their gaze to the Middle East and trying to sort out what's happening there. So we're going to break that down. What effect Donald Trump will have. And I said monumental at the top. I can't begin to tell you, folks. I know we have viewers from around the world joining us. We've got a lot of Americans, a lot of people on every continent joining us. I can't begin to tell you the spirit of optimism here in the nation's capital right now in D.C. I'm about to head back to Texas. You may know I was based here in Washington, D.C. for about 17 years, lived to tell about it, believe it or not. But I have never felt it like this. I believe the Holy Spirit is moving, the Spirit of God. I believe we're in the midst of a mighty move of God. And Donald Trump taking office has set evil to flight. We're in one of those rare moments where evil is on the run and justice and good actually prevail. And there's a spirit among the American people right now, a spirit of optimism, of revival. Now, national revival is in the air, no doubt. But I also see the seeds of spiritual revival. And I've said that President Trump needs to have a King Josiah type approach. Read the Bible. Josiah tore down the high places. He drove a national and spiritual revival among the people. The two were linked. Ultimately, I believe you can't have the one without the other. You might say, what are you talking about? There are plenty of nations that prosper that aren't in the midst of revival. True, but that prosperity only goes so far if you're not honoring the Lord your God, the God who made America great in the first place. Honor God, and he will honor you. I was encouraged yesterday in his inauguration speech in the Capitol Rotunda to see President Trump acknowledge God repeatedly. And he literally said, God Almighty saved my life so I could help make America great again. I believe he's right. And I believe God spared his life for a reason. We have a golden opportunity here. God Almighty has given the United States a reprieve, a second chance, and we dare not squander it. We dare not squander it. And if there is not a collective turning back to God, if we think we are going to accomplish prosperity and all these great things that could be in the offing, that could be at the doorstep, if we think we're going to accomplish that without God's help and without acknowledging God's hand on it and God making it all possible, then this national revival won't last very long. Honor God and he will honor you. Again, I'm very optimistic. I'm excited about what the future holds, the near future for the United States, and by extension for the world and across the West. And we'll talk about the Middle East, of course, in a minute. I want to break down the Trump effect on Israel and the world. But let me just say, I've been talking about the shift. Capital T, capital S, I've been calling it the shift here on the live stream, on my TBN show, on Twitter. And I think what we see are these woke, weak, beta male leaders on the run. and they're being exposed. Everything done in darkness is being brought to light. Again, this is a God moment, a very biblical moment. And we see Justin Trudeau, the beta of all betas, resigning recently in Canada. We see the left-wing government in the UK, led by the weak Keir Starmer, exposed. The Labour Party for their role over the years in the cover-up of Muslim rape gangs raping thousands, untold thousands of young British girls. We see Gavin Newsom, the slippery one, exposed in California for just the complete ideological madness and mismanagement of the wildfire crisis there. Emmanuel Macron has been weakened in France, a lame duck in many ways. And in practically every case, we see a dynamic conservative leader, right-leaning leader, waiting in the wings. And there was a fascinating poll just last week, not a poll, I'm sorry, a study conducted by the UK's Daily Telegraph newspaper. And they found that the whole world, I mean, the whole world, especially Europe and the United States, are turning right. They're rejecting the madness. Of all the elections in 2024, there were 73, I believe, around the world. 57% in the West were won by right-leaning parties. The left has not been this unpopular in decades and decades. It should never be popular, but thankfully, people are waking up. In times where common sense has not been very common, it's making a return. Imagine that. And that's a theme of what President Trump hit on during his speeches yesterday. And by the way, the guy's a machine, right? I mean, I'm at Fox News. I did a late night hit on Fox News with Trace Gallagher. Now that show airs between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Eastern time. I glance at the TV, 12:30 in the morning. I'm getting ready. I did several hits, getting ready to walk back in the studio with Trace. I glanced at the TV. Donald Trump's still awake and still dancing with his wife at one of these several inaugural balls. The man was up, what, 5 in the morning probably yesterday, getting ready for the biggest day of his life. I mean, and he got right to work, signed over 200 executive orders, and we're going to break those down now in regards to the Middle East. But I say all that to say the shift is real. The Trump effect is real. Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be at times a bumpy ride. Look, it's audacious. The plan that Trump is laying out is audacious. And I say that in the best sense of the word. Someone named Barack Obama wrote a book called The Audacity of Hope. Well, this is real, tangible audacity with action behind it. Trump is a man of action. There's not just flowery words like old Barack. Trump is a man of action. And you're seeing that in the first 24 hours since he took office. And I think he'll be a man of action in the Middle East. As a matter of fact, he already is. Folks, listen to this. Here are the 5 executive orders. And I think he signed what? Over 200 yesterday. And by the way, kind of epic to sign executive orders in a stadium, in an arena in DC, as people look on, and then in the Oval Office to sign these executive orders and kind of give a little monologue on each one before he signs it and banter with reporters in the room for a straight hour as he signs the orders. It goes without saying, and Trump pointed this out, could anyone in their wildest dreams fathom sleepy Joe Biden doing anything of the sort? Or even, how many times did good old Joe take questions over the past 4 years? But you know what? Turning the page from the madness. And again, the Western world, I think, not all, and certainly not all, Europe is hanging on for their dear lives. Olaf Scholz, the German leader, said just today in Davos, home of the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, the New World Order, Scholz said that freedom of speech, we believe in it in Europe, but not for extreme right-wing views. There's no freedom of speech there. You might say, well, I agree with Scholz. Extreme neo-Nazi. Folks, here's the problem. Extreme right-wing to people like Olaf Scholz and by extension, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, the left here in America, extreme right-wing are people like Donald Trump and Elon Musk and JD Vance. That's extreme right-wing in their view. So they're not saying when he talks about censoring and canceling, quote, extreme right-wing views, he's not talking about Hitler clones. But you know that's what he means. He means just average, traditional, conservative, right-wing voices. And we know that because, remember, during the election here in the States, in the weeks leading up to the election, Harris and that crew called Trump and his supporters Nazis. Trump's a fascist. This is madness, but that's what these people believe. And they believe me, if Donald Trump would have lost this election, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation right now. There's a really good chance we wouldn't, because I'd be getting flagged by YouTube. So he dodged a bullet on July 13th, 2024. And we, the American people, by extension, dodged a bullet. And whether the Western world knows it or not, they dodged a bullet too, because people are waking up and they're saying, if America can do it, they can elect Trump. They can push back against this woke, secular, socialistic madness, open borders madness. Why can't we? So Trump has inspired people across Europe. Let's see what happens. I'm optimistic, but expect the unexpected in these prophetic days in which we're living. But let's get to those 5 executive orders relating to Israel, the Jews, and the Palestinians that Donald Trump signed into law yesterday. Or not signed into law, he signed the executive orders. Number 1, President Trump revoked, I'm just reading this straight off my phone, he revoked Executive Order 14115, which was put into place by, you guessed it, the Biden regime. It had sanctioned certain Israeli settlers in the West Bank, which we call Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of Israel. Now, this was a ridiculous move by the Biden-Harris administration, where they're trying to equate people who live in Judea and Samaria, who believe in the Jewish people's ancient, eternal right and claim to that land, essentially comparing them and putting them on par with Hamas and Hezbollah. That's what this executive order by Biden did. And Trump overturned that with an order yesterday. Thank God. Number 2, Trump restored sanctions on the International Criminal Court, reversing their cancellation under Biden. Now, if you watch us on a regular basis, you know the International Criminal Court, the ICC, has been an anti-Israel, anti-Semitic mouthpiece filled with just anti-Semitic demagogues. And they've made it their organization's mission, it seems, this international body, to persecute Israel, to harass and pursue Israel. And now Donald Trump said, okay, you can do that, but you're going to pay a price. And he signed this executive order yesterday sanctioning them. And by the way, those sanctions, as I just read, had been canceled by Joe Biden. All the good that Trump did in his first term, Biden canceled out, or at least tried to. And now Trump has to reverse course yet again. It's so interesting. But you might say, wow, it's a shame Trump didn't have 8 consecutive years. But folks, I see God's hand in it, in that, think about it. If he would have took office in 2021, can you imagine the harassment? Look, they harassed him for 4 years when he wasn't in office there. Could you imagine how they would have pursued him, hounded him, try to get him out, have him impeached, resign? It would have been madness. And now he has a mandate. He has the country behind him. He has a stronger vice president next to him. The world's a different place. This is the time. God's timing for him to take office. Second term delayed, but on God's timing. And now he's straightening things out, which brings us to number 3 of the 5 executive orders he signed yesterday relating to the Middle East. A 90-day pause was placed on all U.S. foreign developmental assistance programs by Trump to review their alignment with administration policy. You might say, that's all Greek to me, Stakelbeck. Well, here's the big takeaway. UNRWA, UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. You might say, again, Stakelbeck, this sounds like some bureaucratic non-entity. And I wish I could say it was, but as you know, if you've been following us here on the live stream, UNRWA is an evil organization. I don't use that word lightly. It's an arm of the UN, which is another evil body. And UNRWA literally had Hamas members among its ranks. So Trump had cut their funding rightfully during his first term, and Biden restored it. I mean, that administration that just left, it was feet that ran towards evil, as the one proverb says. There you had it. Good was called evil, and evil was called good, as the prophet Isaiah once laid out. And man, oh man, time to make America sane again. But okay, the 4th executive order, Trump authorized. And what do you think of these, by the way? Are you encouraged? If you're an American or you're not an American, what do you think of this? Leave some words there in the chat. Leave your thoughts. We've got, I say, the most educated audience on YouTube, our watchmen and women on the wall. And by the way, while you're there, if you haven't yet subscribed, make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. We're coming to you most days here, even sometimes on the weekend, depending on the news cycle, with breaking news, current events, chiefly about the Middle East and Israel, but we broaden as well when needed, and all from an unapologetically biblical perspective. So make sure to subscribe. And you may know we just passed 1 million subscribers in 2024, and we're looking for even bigger things in 2025 in these exciting Bible times, prophetic times in which we're living. Okay, number 4, Trump. And this to me is near and dear to my heart as an American. Trump authorized the deportation of visa holders who support hateful ideologies, terrorism, or national security threats, such as individuals involved in pro-Hamas protests, riots, or fundraising efforts. That means the pro-Hamas mobs on college campuses in particular, and in America's streets in places like Times Square, bye-bye. If you're not a citizen, if you're not here lawfully, if you're a foreign student, you're visiting on a visa, you're out of here. And I think the American people are going to love that. And hopefully we can get a grip on these pro-Hamas, violent anti-Semitic mobs. It's madness what's occurred over the past year on that front, the past 15 months, I should say, since Hamas attacked Israel. Remember that. Hamas, unprovoked, attacked and slaughtered 1,200 Israelis and dragged hundreds more away into captivity. And these people in the streets are actually celebrating that. You saw the Hamas savages over the weekend, didn't you? On Sunday, the Hamas orcs surround these 3 poor Israeli girls who lived in hell on earth, abused sexually, physically, probably in every way over the past 15 months in dungeons underground, not even seeing the sunlight. And they finally get freed as part of this hostage deal. And you see these Hamas savages surround them, intimidate them. That was just horrific. It shows you what a savage cesspool it is. And where's AOC? Where are all the feminists? As these 3 girls are harassed by thousands of scumbags, evil, demonic tools of Satan himself. And that might sound, wow, Stakelbeck over the top. No, these are modern day Nazis, these Hamas jihadists. And the world saw what they did on Sunday as these 3 girls, these 3 young ladies were led, thankfully released and led back into Israel. The way they were surrounded, harassed, it was just pure evil. And you know what? They've paid a heavy price for the past 15 months. They can get out there, a few hundred of them, a few thousand of them, wave their guns around, but about close to 20,000 of them have been killed. Their rocket arsenal has been destroyed, and all their leadership is dead. And Israel is going to finish the job, because I don't think, even Trump said yesterday, I don't think that all 3 phases will be complete of this hostage deal. And we've talked about it a bunch here on the channel. Last week, I broke down the deal, but I don't think we're going to get to a 3rd phase. I think Israel, with the blessing of Donald Trump, will go back into Gaza and finish the job. And they're pretty far along the way with all they've accomplished. Hamas is essentially a ragtag guerrilla group right now. But there's more work to be done there, and that chapter is not closed just because of this hostage ceasefire deal. Remember that. Okay. One more thing to mention with Trump and his 5th executive order yesterday relating to the region, to the Middle East. He lifted restrictions on arms sales to Israel, including the supply of 2,000-pound bombs, to reaffirm U.S. support for Israel's defense. Wow. As you know, Joe Biden withheld crucial arms shipments to Israel because this administration, the previous one again, had a nasty habit of equating Israel with Hamas and essentially drawing a moral equivalency between the two. So he withheld arms. And not only that, he went on national TV here in the States and was beamed across the world and declared, we're withholding arms if Israel invades Rafah. Well, thank God Israel ignored him and invaded Rafah and killed Yahya Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, the architect of October 7th, in Rafah. But he withheld the shipments. And the entire world saw, and they said, wow, there's daylight between the United States and Israel. And Hamas and Anthony Blinken, the outgoing Secretary of State, actually admitted this. Whenever Hamas and its Iranian masters, more on them in a minute, perceived daylight, distance, tension, acrimony between the United States and Israel. Then Hamas hardened its stance in the hostage negotiations and drove a harder bargain. This is not brain surgery. Of course, Hamas would do that. They're evil, but they're clever and they're cunning. And they observe this. They see Biden and Bibi not getting along because of Biden publicly criticizing Israel time and time again, even withholding much needed arms shipments in a time of war. And Hamas says, divide and conquer. We can take advantage of this schism between the U.S. and Israel. It was the height of idiocy. If you have a close friend and you've got a disagreement, settle it behind closed doors. And if you can't settle it behind closed doors, don't broadcast to the world, we've had a falling out, because you're shared enemies. The jihadis are shared enemies of the United States and Israel. Your shared enemies will take note and will act accordingly. And that's exactly what happened. So I like these 5 executive orders a whole lot. And what do you think? I know we're commenting here in a very lively chat on this Tuesday afternoon, January 21st, 2025, the first full day in office for Donald J. Trump, the 47th president of the United States. Second term starts. Exciting times. And we want to break down what this all means. 2 things: for Iran and for Israel, Saudi normalization. And those are 2 prophetic topics. I want to do that in a minute. But first, we're talking about Israel under siege over the past 15 months. Our partner, Magen David Adom, incredible organization. You've heard me talk about them a bunch, and for good reason. They are Israel's emergency services system. They respond to every terror attack in Israel, every single one, every rocket that falls, every suicide bomber, every shooting, stabbing, car ramming. God forbid, I hate to even talk about it, but it happens, and we know it happens all too often. Magen David Adom, they are there. They're the first ones on the scene. They dispatch every ambulance in Israel, and they receive thousands of emergency calls every single day. They don't only respond, by the way, to terror attacks. They respond to heart attacks, car accidents, everything. It's SaveLivesIsrael.com. SaveLivesIsrael.com. These are Israel's first responders. They're inundated right now. Israel's facing wars on multiple fronts in the north and the south. Magen David Adom ambulances are there. And when you stand with and support Magen David Adom, you're standing with Israel and fulfilling that biblical mandate to bless Israel laid out in Genesis 12:3. I can't think of a more tangible way to do that than to support Magen David Adom. This is an all largely volunteer force, folks, leaving their families to put their lives on the line, doing God's work. Some 17 ambulances destroyed since October 7th. At least 30 Magen David Adom volunteers killed in the line of action since October 7th. Again, volunteers. SaveLivesIsrael.com. In Israel's time of greatest need, people ask me, how can I help? Here you go. Magen David Adom, SaveLivesIsrael.com. They need ambulances. They need bandages, medical supplies. I've got a list here too. My friends at Magen David Adom just sent. They said, Eric, can you let everyone know these are some of the things we need? And we're trying to raise funds for life support ambulances, emergency rapid response vehicles, ambulance medical equipment, breast milk processing for babies in urgent need. Look, there's refugees in Israel in their own land, living away from home. An emergency blood drive they need sponsorship for, pediatric work for kids who are affected by this, respirators, bandages, a blood unit for the IDF. They're raising money for all of this. So folks, at SaveLivesIsrael.com. Check it out. Stand with Magen David Adom. Support their great work. For such a time as this, it goes without saying. And it's not a good time for Iran right now. And we've talked about this a bunch. Now, Europe. It is not a good time for Iran, for the Iranian regime. For the Iranian people, it's potentially a great time, because we could see regime change there. That's my prayer, God willing. Eventually, we've been praying for that for 46 years now. And there were times, especially in 2009, where it felt like it may be close. A good chunk of the Iranian people detest their leaders. They're the main victims of this wicked regime. Remember that, folks. And I think Donald Trump coming into office is the final, I don't want to say nail in the coffin, it could be for the Iranian regime, but let's say the final push, the final nudge to put Iran completely against the wall. Proxies, smashed. Hamas in its death throes in many ways, as I discussed a minute ago. Hezbollah, totally, they don't want any right now. They've been smashed and demoralized. Assad is gone in Syria. The Houthis, although they're very brazen and very foolish, they still fire missiles and drones, but they have been hit very hard too, and there will be more hits to come to the Houthis. The Iraqi militias, Iran's Iraqi proxies, they've said, you know what, we're not planning on attacking Israel for now. They've gotten the memo. So what you have is Iran's ring of fire that was once so mighty just a year ago, or at least it seemed so, especially Hezbollah. It's basically a smoldering heap of ruins right now. Oh, and by the way, the head of the snake, Iran, its air defenses have been destroyed by Israel. October 26th, Israel took out Iran's air defenses. By the way, also in December, Israel took out Syria's air defenses. So if Israel wants to strike Iran's nuclear facilities, it has a clear path to do so right now. It's a golden opportunity. This is the year of reckoning. I keep using that phrase, the year of reckoning for Iran's nuclear program, 2025. This is it, folks. This is where the rubber meets the road. You will know, I believe, by the end of the year, whether Israel, perhaps alone with a green light from Trump, perhaps with active military support from the United States, either destroys Iran's nuclear facilities or Iran, under everyone's noses, and I think this is unlikely considering Israel's excellent intelligence inside Iran, but Iran, another option, Iran breaks out. Iran says, we've got the bomb. We're a nuclear power. We followed the North Korea model. Now we are untouchable. You can forget about regime change. We've got a nuclear umbrella now. I don't think Israel or Trump would let them get to that point, but it's on the table. Iran dashing right now in a desperate last-second attempt to finalize the building of the bomb, and they could have a bomb within a month. We hear all these estimates, right? That's the second option. Either the nuclear facilities are hit or the nuclear weapons facilities, they go live. It's official. We've got the bomb. A third option, kind of a wild card here, Donald Trump, the deal maker, right? Does he, much unlike what Obama did and what Biden tried to replicate, the disastrous Iran nuclear deal, does Trump strike a deal where Iran is left weakened and a deal completely in favor of the West, the US and Israel, which leaves Iran without the bomb and leaves the Iranian regime weakened? That's a possibility. He's the deal maker. So we shall see. Those three options, I think, are all on the table, but I think you will know by the end of this year which way those Iranian nuclear winds are blowing. That's number one. That's the Trump effect. I think number two, the Abraham Accords. It's back on the table. And you could, by the end of this year, I believe, see normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia. There's a caveat there. Israel's paying a heavy price right now in this hostage deal. 1,900 terrorists, over 1,900 are going to be released in exchange for 33 hostages. And everyone wants the hostages back. But man, it's a no-win situation in a lot of ways. This is an extremely heavy price to pay. So Israel, I don't think, is going to get in a position where the calculus is, okay, peace, normalization, official ties with Saudi Arabia, history made, prophetic overtones for sure. But Israel, you have to agree to a Palestinian state. Now, the incoming ambassador to Israel, U.S. ambassador to Israel, my friend Mike Huckabee, said just yesterday or the day before on Fox News, he does not support a Palestinian state, nor should he, nor should Israel. So if that is a demand, a prerequisite laid down by Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, the Saudi crown prince, I think Israel says thanks, but no thanks. That's how it's got to be. Now, the Trump administration, to my understanding, is saying, look, Palestinian state, not interested, off the table. And you saw that during the first term. That was kind of the genesis, no pun intended, of the Abraham Accords in the first place, where Trump and his team, which is their habit, which is a good habit, thought outside the box, outside the usual paradigm, And they said, you know what? The Palestinians aren't interested in peace or normalization. Let's go to the Arab nations that are, the UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. So that was a Palestinian state was de-emphasized during Trump's first term, and I anticipate it will be in his second term as well. So I would hope that the Saudis, and again, Trump's the deal maker, I would hope that the Saudis say, okay, we can do this, and it doesn't require a Palestinian state. Normalization between Israel and the Saudis. We're about to find out. And I think another part of this year of reckoning and the Trump effect will be, and by the way, other nations could sign on to the Abraham Accords rather quickly. Think of Oman. There's been rumblings about Indonesia. Yes, it's not in the Middle East, it's in Southeast Asia, of course, but Indonesia is actually the world's most populous Muslim nation. There's been rumblings about Indonesia normalizing with Israel, Oman, and some other nations that may be a bit more outside the box. So that's on the table, no doubt. And I think also, I mentioned the Houthis. What will be the approach to the Houthis? I would think that Trump will work pretty strongly in tandem with Israel against the Houthis, because the Houthis affect not only Israel, the Houthis have an effect on the United States because they've shut down commercial shipping in the Red Sea. So that's a no-go for Trump, who wants to obviously rebuild the economy here in the U.S. and for it to have a positive global effect. So I think you'll see the Trump administration and Israel work more closely on the Houthis, and then Syria. I think the Trump administration is going to stay out of Syria as much as they can, but let's see which way the chess pieces move in that nation. And I'm talking in particular about Turkey, because Trump eventually may need to send a message to Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the very emboldened Turkish tyrant, who would love nothing better than to be at Israel's doorstep as he backs those jihadi so-called rebels who now have taken power over a large chunk of Syria, including Damascus. So a lot going on, and that's kind of like the understatement of the year, and it's rinse and repeat every day. A lot going on in the Middle East, shocking. But with President Trump taking office now, fasten your seatbelts, because I think we saw positive momentum, certainly during his first term. I mean, Soleimani eliminated, the U.S. Embassy moving to Jerusalem, Iran, the Revolutionary Guards Corps of Iran placed on the terror watch list. He pulled out of the Iran deal. He recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He crushed ISIS. He did a lot of good in the Middle East during the 4 years he was in office. And our prayer is he does a lot of good these next 4 years, as God is on the move. God is on the move, and no place more than in the place where it all started, the Middle East, and in particular, his land, Israel, and the center of that land, the center of the center, Jerusalem. Hey, it's been great to be here in D.C., my old stomping grounds again, 17 years in the swamp, but I had some good times here as well. Raised our girls here for the first several years of their lives. And again, I feel a shift, and DC is a more hospitable place these days as of January 20th, yesterday, 2025. Keep it all in prayer, and be sure to join us here tomorrow. Not here, but back in the studio in Texas. Wish me a safe travel back home. God bless all of you. Great being with you today. And remember, never hold your peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.